Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to begin to take everything that we've done so far with the working of the white objects, and we're going to put it together into a larger still life. So in our last class you guys developed a sphere, and in that sphere you modeled it and you came up with shadow pattern, center light. Then you began to put in your halftone and gradate it and come up then with your highlight, where that would be sitting near the midtone, and of course coarse shadow gradating down to the reflective light. All of those things now are going to become very important. You guys did it with one object. Now we're going to go into a group of objects. So that was a little experiment to get you to understand the larger project. So today is what I've got set up next to me is a group of about 4 objects. So I've got this little animal in a glass, 2, 3, 4. You guys can use 3 objects, 4 objects. You can even go as many as 5 objects if you have them. They do want to be predominantly white or light, okay? So what I have here is a gourd, and of course it's not white, but it's close. Light will bounce off it, and the shadows are going to be close to the whites. It needs to be like that. Don't use any clear glass. Don't use any transparent glass with high reflections. Don't use any chrome objects. It won't work in this project. Don't use any black objects. So they have to be predominantly light. Now also with it, you want to set it on a piece of light material. And if the wall that you've got it up against is white or close to white, that will work. So it wants to be somewhat of a white environment, so that your shadows like that's on this become clear. And you do want to arrange it in a way where in some places you can see some reflective lights. I'm not going to model this, but I am going to show you how to get it started. Where I'm standing here, I can see a reflective light down here and gradates a bit up to a darker coarse shadow. I can see it on here where I'm standing. And you want to set things up where you can see, like you'll see it, you should be able to see it here. So there's a reflective light there, and it kind of gradates itself up to a dark, and it becomes a little darker. You got your highlight, your center light, and so forth. So you want to be able to see with the light you're putting on it, and the highly reflective white underneath it will bounce up, and it'll start to create those sorts of things. That's why I don't want you to use a dark piece of material. You won't get. If I put my hand here, the reflective light's going to start to disappear, or you'll see the color change. So that's going to be all important for you. So anyways, you want to set up a little still life. Now, when you go back to the beginning of the class, we did talk a little bit about composition and arranging objects. And so before you actually draw this on your large piece of paper, you're going to do probably 3 thumbnail sketches, as they're called. So you're going to do a little frame of reference. In the frame of reference, you're going to draw out these objects. And I just want to go back with you in this little demonstration of drawing out those objects and how to think about it. We've been through this before, but we've been away from it now for a good month and a half, if not longer. So with this one, I'm thinking of it like all of you should remember. I've got an axis line going this way. You guys are going to see it one way, of course. I'm going to see it from a slightly different direction, but nonetheless, we've got an axis line going this way, and remember those axis lines are important. Why are they important? You remember back, we talked about axis lines carries your eye path, carries your eye direction, so your eye goes this way. So I've got another one tilted this way, so it's got a triangle, and this one's not, for me, it might be dead center for you, but for me it's not, it's over to the left. So I'm setting it up where these two, where this has some relationship to this. And of course, I've got a vertical in there, which offsets this. And of course, the ball is just a ball. It's a vertical and a horizontal in a way. So that's my little composition. So when you start your thumbnail sketch, is what you want to do is come up with how big are you going to be making this. Now, the thumbnail sketches can be small. I'm doing this bigger than you need to do yours. Thumbnail sketches sometimes can only be 5 inches high or 3 inches or just small. So I'm going to do this like this. Now, this would represent, in one sense, the paper that you're working on. So, I mean, I could say if I wanted my paper more horizontal, this composition doesn't work horizontal because I've got it vertical. But say if you did set something up horizontal, I could start this composition where it's a frame like this. And this thumbnail now would represent your paper turned more in a landscape position, okay? And if you want to set up a still life where it goes more horizontal, then your little thumbnail sketch would go this way. And is what this is saying is these borders are not like, if this is your paper, which it will be, this is your paper, as it's going to say in my little description, you guys are going to come in a 1/2 inch and you're going to make a border. The border isn't necessarily the frame of reference, but it will be nonetheless, but it's a border. And if I have my paper vertical, then my paper would be like this. Now I'm just showing you what it's going to look like ultimately in the drawing in relation to the thumbnail sketch you pick and how you're thinking of the thumbnail. So this inside border is now my thumbnail, and I'm thinking of it, even though it's going to be real small, that if I blow it up, I can make it fit on my paper and fit in those dimensions. So when I'm thinking about this little sketch, I have to think about how low is this? How low is this for me? Now for me, this is much closer, so I've got to estimate how low is that? And then where is this one coming anyways? So here's my triangle, here's my diagonal, and so I've got to watch out and say, if I put a ball in here, will that work? And then this is off my angle, and I think I've got a little more room. Now, is what you're doing with a thumbnail sketch, you're being aware of these distances, because I don't want them the same ultimately on both sides, and also ultimately I'm trying to figure out, can I get the ball in there? And so that's what you're trying to figure out. What are your distances? Now, I could have this a little higher, but I'm going to keep it where I've got it. So then when we thought about form, if you remember, I could think of the neck of this as a cylinder. And so I could do that and just put this in here this way, this way. I could look at this top piece and say, really, it's a shape. And I could say maybe it's a shape that bends in this direction. And so what is the shape of the top of that thing? And you could kind of look at it in terms of shapes. And so there's my angle, that's pretty close. This might be a little long in here, but I'm going to leave it. Well, maybe I won't. And so I'm going to bring this up and then adapt this maybe a little closer to its shape. But again, this is a thumbnail. We're just working out relationships of things ultimately. And this then curves. This end curves over. So there's my first shape, and so it's doing this. So then I'm going to watch where this glass is. For me, the glass is a very little bit lower, not much. And then sometimes on these drawings, like I might have to do on this one, I might have to measure across and see where does this go to here. And so I have to say it's going to come up to about here. Now this is the very top part of my curve, not the low part. The low part of this curve is about midway, so it's going to be about here. So again, you're just trying to get placements. Now I've got this guy in here and he's tilted. So my axis line in here, say if I think of his legs, so if I'm thinking through and I'm going through there, what is he doing? What's his axis line through the center? So what does that do if I follow it up? And it shows that I might be able to turn it a little bit more when I look at it. For me, it skims the top of that, so I want that. So all I'm thinking now is one angle, another angle. This is a 90-degree angle off of this one. This hits where it hits for me, so it looks like it's going to be pretty good. So then I begin to say, where is his neck? And I can say maybe there. And so this angle is this angle. So you're thinking all about how to set this thing up in terms of general placements. Now, I've got to be careful of where this shape goes in because I have a tendency of wanting to do everything big. And so I'm watching my line. So for me, the back of this goes way outside of this. and then it's going to turn and come around, and his leg is going to stick out like over here, and in here there'd be another leg. It would come in a little bit, so I'm going to do this and then put on the front of the ellipse that I'm seeing. So then this will go in. Now for me, the ellipse is a little steeper than for you, right? So I'm looking down on it more, so now it'll look like he's sitting in there a little bit, but you're trying to figure it out through there. And then you're going to draw the simple placement of his head. So I've got to watch. For me, I see an angle. There's a side. So again, watch your perspective. And I'm going to watch the front of his head this way. And then his nose is going to stick out. So I got to begin to think of how does that nose come out. And for me, it's over to the left, going this way, because I see more of this side. So keep thinking, as all of you know, when you're drawing something out, keep thinking of the perspective of it. So now on this side, there's an eye. This is a detail. It's a little thumbnail, but I want to try to think of my placements and maybe how that eye would go if it was being placed in there. So now some of the detail, his arm's going to come across this way, and I've got to watch this a little better. Watch your center lines, and then off on this side of his arm, it's going to overlap his body for me. And so this is going to come out and around, and there's a little bit of a space, and I watch this one and how he sits in here. Now, I am going to do this. I'm going to raise it up a little bit from where I had it. So is what I want to do is check these arms out. This one's going to curve a little bit, and this is what's nice about your thumbnails. You're trying to figure these out. So this one, I want to check them out a little closer. It's a little bit higher than what I originally had it, which will work better. He's going to sit in there. Head's going to get a little wider. His ear is going to come up on this side. On this side is ear. I'm going to overlap it from where I'm at just a little bit so it touches. Okay. So anyways, we got him close to where we want him. I'm still trying to watch the space around. Again, with the thumbnail, that's the big thing, is how is this filling the space? What is this distance to this distance? They want to be different. Okay. I'm going to look at a little bit of a curve on the bottom of this. I'm going to cheat a little bit. You guys can too, if you need to. Because in the end, what this is going to want to fit on your larger paper and work out well with your border. I just brought that down a shade because the ball that I'm seeing wants to be, I would say, somewhere over here. And for me, it goes up and over. I'm purposely trying to overlap things so that this can touch this and this can overlap that. So there's some interrelationships. You don't have to overlap everything, but it is nice to have things touching in some sense and give it a sense of space. So anyways, now I've got that object. Is what you would then do is you would measure some things. As you know, you can extend your arm. I can say how big is this to the next object. So I could take this and bring it in. They look close. So when I do that and come up against, it comes up to about here. And this looks like it's about the same, so that relationship isn't bad. I could measure my height and see if it works. This would be the beginning of the thumbnail, and then you want a line of where the table meets. I see it going on an angle. I don't like the angle. So what I'm going to do is make a creative decision and make it horizontal, because I've got enough angles going. I don't want to place another angle in there because I want the drawing to be more about the modeling of the objects. So now our negative space is interesting. It varies. This distance is different than that distance. That's what the thumbnail is about. The other thing, it's all about shapes. So is what I would do in my thumbnail is figure out the shadow, because that's a shape. And how those shadows play in is going to divide the white of my tablecloth, so that becomes a shape. So you want to say, how are those shapes in your drawing? This becomes another one, and it angles back for me, which I like. I like it curving back. it connects into this. I don't even see it. And for me, there's a little bit of a shadow on the wall, and it would come this way. It would hit my border, and it would stop, and it would just do that. So, which is nice is now this shadow becomes this shadow. At the beginning, I put it, now this angles this way, which helps complement my angles, and all should be well. So that would be thumbnail sketch number 1. And is what you're going to be doing is 3 of these types of thumbnail sketches, okay? I'm going to show you one other possibility. I want you to do 3 possibilities, and then as what the idea is going to be is you're going to look at, in the end result, your 3 possibilities, and you're going to say, which one do you like the best? And then you're going to select that one, and that's going to become your long drawing. So today is what the process is going to be, is you guys finding some objects, setting up a still life. I haven't gotten on to drawing shadows on here. That would all come next if I like this design and my big shape breakups for a composition. Once that's worked out, I go, great. Once that's drawn out, say if I did choose this one, once that's drawn out on my larger piece of paper, then I would do this and try to get everything right. And remember, when you do transfer, if I have this roughly the dimensions of your paper, and there is an easy way to do it, but anyways, I can take like that, I can make an X on this, and I could transfer that drawing like we've done before if these dimensions are roughly the same but on a smaller scale. It's one way to do it. The other way is just to redraw it. But I'm going to show you one other possibility here. So what I'm doing is arranging another little group here and trying to get another idea going. So I'm going to use a couple of the same things and change and put a sphere on top of a vase, which is nice because it creates some nice shadows. I get some nice reflective lights in here. I now get a reflective light from him onto here, but the shadow pattern is still nice. I've got a nice change in my light going from an extreme light, gradating down eventually. So again, when you're setting up these still lives under the light, it's not just about the arrangement of the objects. It is about that, but it's how does your light, is the light creating good shadows? Is there some nice reflective lights to develop? This object is pretty much all in shadow. That doesn't bother me. The rim is in light because it's a reflective surface. So in the end, I've got some wonderful changes of values in the shadow in order to make my lights even more nicer because of the overall bathing of shadow. So, is what we're going to do is with this one, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to put a frame of reference because it's our thumbnail, and I'm going to try to think of it as a nice vertical. So the ones I'm showing you here are basically vertical. Yours do not have to be. They can be more horizontal. So you can decide. Okay. So I'm going to take that for my frame of reference. Now I've got a different problem. Now I've got a strong vertical being played against the diagonal and another vertical. So you want to kind of look at it in an abstract manner. I do have a diagonal going here, and in a way a vertical there. So I can think of this as my vertical. Where is it? I got to leave room for his legs and always leave room for error. This one I cut pretty close, but I want to leave a little room if possible. So how much lower is this leg than this? You got to look through things. You got to measure to figure it out. So if I'm saying the bottom of the vase is here, then his feet are going to come somewhere down here, and that I have enough room to pull that off. So I can start it that way. The cup, if this is the bottom of the vase, the cup is going to be over here somewhere. Do I have enough room for what I want for its sizes? If not, make a couple of adjustments, but remember this, the end result's got to work for your frame on your border. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to think of it as, what does my ball do here on the top? Now, you guys can, there's a few ways to begin something like this. I'm going to think of it this way. I could, if I wanted to measure that ball, and all of you know how to do that, measure it down, where does it go? And it would come down to about here. If I've got that ball about right, it's pretty close, so I can't go much bigger than I've got it. So that would be roughly it. There is a construction line or an angle that would go like this to the glass. So I'm trying to now think of this configuration at large. So I'm seeing all the objects bound together as one. Now with the vase, as what I'm going to look for is the widest area. When I take the widest area of the vase, and it'll look this way from your view as well, and I take a vertical line up into the ball, it clips the edge by about that much. So then I know that my vase, the width is going to be to this. And I can do the same on the other side. So I know that's the widest area of the vase. Now, is what's interesting about breaking things down this way and not just starting with a vase and putting a ball or a ball with a vase, is what I'm doing is I'm measuring this off of my existing shape. And I can keep, I've got my center line, so if this is equal to this, I know it's symmetrical. And now I know this relationship works to that relationship. So it's a quick way of doing it. In there, then, we know this is the widest. Where is the widest? How low is the widest? And so I can say, well, maybe it's about down like this. And so if that's the widest area of the vase, I could do that. And then I can say it's narrow here, and I've got an ellipse coming around for the top of the vase. And then this is going to curve out, and this is going to curve out, and it's going to hit that point. So then we know we can keep the symmetry of the vase. And now if I look at the vase, does it stay as a vertical line all the way down? And you say no, it looks like it angles in. So then I say how far in? And then I can make a little mark, because the thing about a vase is the symmetry. So what is this doing to this? And so now off my widest point, I can drive a line, and I can be assured that it will work because I'm doing it off, especially if that's straight. So now we've got our little key points as our thumbnail, and the perfect proportions on a thumbnail isn't exact. You don't have to worry about it too much, but you do want to be close, because the knowledge you glean from this, when you transfer it onto your next drawing, say if this is the one I chose, I've already worked out some of the strategy, so when I enlarge it, everything you've done here can work for you in the next drawing. So anyways, now I got to try to figure out how far is the cup away from this vase. So I'm going to look at, I could check even my angle if I wanted to and do this. It looks pretty close. So now I'm going to take the cup from where I'm at, and it looks like it's about as close as this, and I'm going to place in a line. That line, however, I'm going to keep it vertical even though the cup angles in a little bit. So I'm going to say that, and I'm going to say how low is it? It's lower. So what I'm trying to figure out is the bottom of that vase in relation, or cup in relation to the bottom of this. And it's getting pretty close now. So I'm going to say it's about here, and I'm going to place it in roughly here. The top of the highest point, usually when I draw cups, I don't go for the front, I go for the shape in its entirety. So I look for the back of it to the lowest point. So that's what I'm thinking. So I'm looking at that, and I'm saying, where does it measure in relation to this object? And it's somewhere about here. Okay. I'm erroring. It's always good in a drawing, if you're to error in any direction, which direction do you want to error in? I'm erroring on this being too big than too short. So I'm measuring this across, and I'm saying, okay, where is that? It's a little lower than halfway. I think it's a touch lower than this could come down a little bit, but it doesn't look good to me for its height, so I'm gonna err on this being too tall. Always do that. It gives you a little more confidence when you draw, because we can never get anything perfect. So anyways, we're gonna say that that's there. when I look at that little stuffed animal's head, it's at an angle. I want to watch all my angles. And where does it hit the cup? And I'm going to say it's going to hit about here. And this is its angle. So check your angle if you're doing something kind of like what I'm doing. Now, the thing with erring on too high, it could put this higher than it actually is in reality. So it does, it's a chain reaction. But anyways, I'm going to keep it that way. And then I'm going to put an ellipse in here because I do want to now get a better sense of how this head works, because this box is now going to be gone and his head kind of caresses up against it. And so I want to kind of say, where is that? And where is his head coming up? Because, you know, he's nestled up against there. So I see the ridge of the curve, but this is a little lower. So you want to think about those things as you're laying it out. Anyways, this is going to be placed in here. And then his body, I'm going to try to look at it. I'm watching the negative space, the space between things. How low? So what I'm saying is there's an angle here and then it turns. Where does the angle almost hit the table in relation to the cup? Very important for me to get it accurate. So it's here. And then it makes its turn this way. And now I'm trying to say, what is that angle? I've got it off. So I got to correct it. I'm wanting to turn it more to the left, and it looks like it's coming down this way more. So I want to keep it right. Keep checking your angles. It's coming out at me. I'm going to put a thickness for the foot, and then I'm going to say this is going off into this angle up, and the curve of his body, where is it? So I'm going to place him in there like that. Now, you want to do what I'm doing. You want to start with the object furthest away, and if there's something in front of it, draw right over it, okay? So you can get placements. Don't draw around things. In other words, don't start this angle up against this one and try to just draw whatever you see of the one behind. That's very bad drawing ideas. You want to draw through and try to sense the object so that you know where you're going with the object. So anyways, that's doing that. So now I'm going to try to get a sense for his body here and a little bit of where the curve of where the legs would begin. Again, I've got to watch my angles. So this angle and how it's going to work along with this angle. Curves are nice. This gives me the side of his head here, a little bit of the top of his head here. This angle will give me now the side of his body here. So I'm trying to now turn him into a little bit of form. And always go for your center line, okay? So my center line, where is it? I'm going to say it's there, which will get me to wherever his legs are. My tendency on this is wanting to turn it all to the left. I don't know why. So I got to keep checking myself and making sure this is going in the right direction, and then putting a foot on there in the right direction. And then develop it with a few curves. Curves can help because they begin to suggest that form when they go in there, okay? So anyways, now we've got that placed. The center of his face is going to be following this direction. Now, what does the nose do? So I'm going to work off with that curve now. It sticks out a little beyond his face. So watch that overlapping shape, and then I can tuck in the back of his head. And so it's going to work there. There is an end to his nose. I'm going to put a plane to it. I've had you guys do curves. So in other words, your hand can only go so far, and then it turns. That's a plane break, if you remember back. So that's why I'm wanting to show you this thumbnail sketches, because this stuff we've been over, but it's been a while. So go over, place a plane break so that sticks out. This would be my shadow edge. I'm going to use it so it sticks out. So we start to place those. Watch, if there's an eye on something, it will follow the form. And so this one is curving in this direction, very narrow. And then this one being closer to us, it's going to be wider. And it's going to come over to the side a little bit. So this is going to be wider, that one's going to be further. And then we would do this, okay? Now, off of that, his ear. There's a few little changes to this in order to get the head right, but I'm just about finished where I'm going to leave it. I'm watching the negative space between the ear and the vase. You got to do the same. Keep watching negative spaces. So important in order to get the sense of where something is at, okay? So anyways, that's there. I'm going to put the curve on the bottom of this. His arms, where are they? So there's a strong angle coming through this way. Watch the axis line. I like the angle. I like this angle to this angle. I think this angle helps tie our shapes together. So take advantage of those sorts of things. This arm then will come up against this object here, get rid of what's through it, edit it out, and then on this side we get this one peeking through, okay? So the arms are going in that direction. It's a big part of the composition. This one would be a little smaller than I've got it, but I'm going to leave it. I think you guys kind of get the idea. But you would want to watch these distances. For me, this arm would be smaller, which would make it go back just a little better because of the foreshortening, of course. So our objects are in place. Our simple composition is here. This line was to be used for the width of the handle. I do have a handle that's sitting in here. And once that's in there, it'll give us a little bit of an idea of this angle and what I was trying to search out from the beginning of plotting the design. This has an angle to it. I think I'm going to use it on this drawing. I think it works pretty good. This one looked better horizontal. I do like this angle being played off of this angle. So I think it works to my advantage to do that for the drawing. Even if I could fudge this angle is nice. Even if I could fudge this to make it parallel that a little bit, I think would work out nice as well. So anyways, I would leave that like that. And again, as we mentioned, the next thing is shadow shapes. Watch them. You want some of them in yours. That's going to help us connect parts together. And the shadow shape is going to play a big role in the end result of your drawing. This one will come across. And I get a wonderful shadow on the wall, this time pulling into the design a little bit and turning this way and hitting up against here, coming down, leaving a little light in. Well, that works out nice because this brings us in this direction. And of course, we've got a vertical and this going in this direction. So it's an interesting composition, our bigger negative space, our smaller negative space. So if this was transferred, these are thumbnail sketches, if this was transferred to a larger piece of paper, this distance would want to be right on your larger piece of paper to this, and all the spaces like this would vary. That's why you need to work out 3 of these drawings, because what you want to do is work out 3 of them, and in the end result, I might like my third one better than my first one or my middle one, and then you're going to choose. So the last thing I want to show you, I'm going to pin up just a couple of drawings. They're not in a total completed stage, but I do want to talk about them in light of the end result of what you're going to do. This one here is what happens, and I'm going to show you another one then that has a little more detail. Student drawing, and is what happened. It's a little still life. There's some white boxes and a couple little white figures. So once the composition is settled, so on your piece of paper, you're going to, I don't know if you can see this, but there is a border. This paper is 18 by 24. Yours is 16 by 20. So this is an inch on, is what it's going to say in the description when you read it today, only to come a ½ inch. The only reason I'm making it a ½ inch is so that you got enough room to draw. So anyways, this person who did this, they let this run off, but they were considering this negative space different from this negative space. So where they're plotted, like our negative spaces are important. This border that's here, you're going to make yours a little darker in the end result, but this border is representing this border, okay, just so that you know what the thumbnail sketch represents. This drawing is done with pencil. I'm giving you guys the option of doing this drawing with pencil or charcoal. This one is pencil. The pencil, if you still feel like you can't control the charcoal, do pencil, because pencil you can control it and develop your values well. If you're more of a bolder individual and want to work with charcoal, you can cover more ground with charcoal, but trying to get it nice and even sometimes can be challenging. But the end result of a charcoal drawing is very dynamic and very bold because of the darkness of the material. So this one's pencil. This was laid out with a hard pencil like you would do, and this was sketched out. There's a gourd, a little different than this one, and two figurines. Once it was drawn out, like what you already have done, is what will happen is you will shadow map these objects. I'm not going to show you that. You did it on the last project, but I'm just going to now talk with you about it. So this was shadow mapped, as you can see, shadow mapped, and it was a very challenging shadow mapping because of the way the light fell on these characters. And before all these value changes are in here, those weren't in there. There was just an even dark being placed in, and then as they took it further, they took this one even dark and went darker, and then they started to develop it. This one was never finished. I want to show you another one similar to what you guys have been doing, but it's two objects. With this one, you're all familiar with doing the sphere. This is just a sphere on a box. If I had you in a classroom when you did the one object of the sphere, I would have done a demonstration like I had you watch Proco do it, because that was a nice one. I would have had you, but I would have had it on another object, getting you used to two different white objects. But anyways, both of them are white. All of you know about the breakups. You can see them here, just kind of like what you did in your last one, and all of them turned out nice. So now we've got a object on another one. You've got your darkest shadow underneath. You've got the shadow extending and getting softer. There's three different values here. And then you got your core shadow. First it was divided. As you know, I'm just going to run through this with you again. You got the shadow pattern, which would have been this value right here. And then you've got your center light, which is not your halftone, which is this here. And then the halftone went in, as you know, and it's gradated. This is now charcoal, okay, not pencil. This is gradated, and that gradation goes from a dark mid-tone to a light mid-tone to your center light. And now you got the highlight, so all the values are there. Like you saw in the Proco demo, it's a little, the stronger reflective light in this case was here, so therefore they darkened this a little bit and gradated it down. And so all those pieces are in place. I wanted you to see this one because even though you got a white background, the white background is not white. As you can see, it's going to be a light gray. So in these drawings that you're now doing, your larger still lifes, just because something is white doesn't make it white in the end result. So just like this person was doing as a study, in order to make this highlight and the center light advance, this had to be on a value scale. This might have been closer to, here's a center light, and the center light's even a little lighter than this. So this is somewhere around the number 3 on a value scale if your light's coming as white as a number 1. They did put a gradation to it, as you can see it. It's a little lighter, a little darker, which works out nice to bring out the light. These drawings in the end result, I want them refined. I don't want them left crude. In other words, the edges got to work well. If you got a box in yours as a white box, this is one value, this is another value, this is another value. There are 3 different values because of the light. This has to be distinct and even. It can't be broken and scratchy and a bunch of pencil lines. I need even values, as if it was a gradation with ink. This value is even. Then they went back into it. If you notice, corners, it's a little darker, and it gradates down. It gets a little lighter, a little darker in. That's why it's taking on some depth. These weren't developed as much as yours and what I'm expecting these to be. This is kind of just a study. What you're going to do is a final drawing that you're going to spend 2 days with. So this one, gradated down a little bit. You can see the edge is darker. They made a really nice sharp edge. So this edge is darker than this edge. It's all about these edges and then the subtle gradations. Subtle gradation in here, okay? The last one I want to show you is just one object, but just the rendering within the object. And I'm going to get you to see that sort of rendering in your objects, but a whole group of objects. So this one, last drawing we're going to take a look at. This is an individual object they would do, but broken up with reflective lights and subtleties and softness. Now I'm wanting, if you have these sorts of objects, I'm wanting you to take the rendering as far as you can take it on these drawings. So in other words, these are your thumbnails. You blow it up and you draw it out nice. Once it's drawn out, you're separating shadow from light, and you're using your center light for your light, as all of you would know. You're using your shadow as your overall shadow. Then you're working with your gradations and edges, and then you're going to develop it with as much subtlety in there as you can, keeping the patterns accurate. So in this one is what you begin to see is just a cylinder. It's just a white plastic cylinder. And as what happens is they didn't get this edge as sharp as maybe it could be to come forward, but other than that, it's very nice. So as what they did is the same way. This was the light area at the beginning. This was the shadow area. They worked with some really nice soft edges, okay, and gradated those in there. And then they began to put this is a shiny plastic tube, you could say, but it was white. So it picked up a couple of reflections. And so those reflections are put in there. And then you can see the gradation placed in here, going from dark to light, making this light their stronger light so that this goes back. So in other words, if I was to model this mug, there's a gradation going in here from darker to lighter, but these values are darker than what I'm seeing out here, for the exception of this. And you got to take note to this light to that light, because sometimes if this light gets as light as this will jump out rather than this jumping out. So I'm wanting you guys to spend a fair amount of time on these drawings. You have 2 days. Not really, because today you've got to set it up and do the thumbnails and take your time with them, because it all begins here. This is the foundation before you can ever get to the shading. And so I just encourage you to take your time and come up with some good thumbnail sketches. I do want you to photograph these and send them to me. I want to see your thumbnails. I want to see all 3 of them, so I can tell the one you picked from it. I can give you comments on that as well. And you have no homework. I haven't been giving you guys homework. So if rendering this drawing you're about to render and its end result takes longer than Thursday's class period, do it. I mean, if you need to carry it into the weekend, do it. We're at the point of the class now where we're getting deep into the shadows and the rendering of the shadows. The stage has been set, and I need you guys to now really slow up and look at these changes, because you won't see them. The big picture is the big values that we've done up to this point, but now the only way you're going to see the subtlety I'm talking about and presenting is that you really look and slow down, or you will not see them. So take your time with it, and I will be seeing you in the next video.